Hey, what's going on, guys? Tom Lloyd here. Wanted to tell you a little bit about the most recent finish I had at Lake Ouachita in the Bassmaster Open event just this past weekend. And I was able to finish 25th out of about 200 boats. Had a really respectable finish in my first Bass Open event as a boater, as a pro, whatever you want to call it. The first day I had 12 and a half pounds, actually a little over 12 and a half pounds, 12 and three quarter or so. And I was sitting in like 57th, 58th place after day one. One of the big keys to my success on the first day was getting started early. In a big event like that, I don't care what anybody says, there's nerves, there's, emotions, you got butterflies in your stomach, whatever the case may be. And I was no different. I got to my first spot. I knew where I wanted to start. Had a lot of good bites in practice, but it wasn't really super consistent. But I knew where I wanted to start and what I wanted to start doing and just kind of get some fish in the boat. And albeit I'm fishing the opens this year just to possibly make the classic. 1 in 200 chance to make the classic. I think I'm going to take those odds and give it a shot anyway. But I really wasn't in it for points. But at the same time, you can't lose it on the first day. Or you can't win it on the first day, but you certainly can lose it, as the old adage goes. So I wanted to make sure I got some fish in the boat and got some fish in the boat early. So stopped on a spot, kind of a main lake spot with a wobblehead, Apex wobblehead. This is a 3/4 ounce version, which is what I ended the tournament with. I was throwing a 1/2 ounce version because I was targeting that main lake, real super shallow stuff. This Apex wobblehead is fantastic. It comes through cover very well. If you haven't thrown it, the big key with this is you're just going to reel that bait on the bottom. It's not like a jig where you have to, drag it. You certainly can. That's just not my style. I like to move, especially when I'm not 100% sure where those fish are. I want to move around until I can find a group of fish that are willing to bite. During that morning time, I felt like they were, coming up to eat, coming up to feed, whether that was on crawfish or bait. I thought they were eating crawfish. And one of the big keys for me in the springtime is always dyeing your tails in orange. So this little spike it deal, this is totally trashed from using it. But basically, it is a spike it. I took a green pumpkin, very simple. I throw basically two colors in this. I throw green pumpkin, black and blue. And then I dip the tails in that orange, but that's a Rage Menace. And I'm throwing that on 22-pound Samurai, Daiwa Samurai fluorocarbon. I think that is really key, especially, it was fairly off-colored water. It wasn't dirty right down in there, but off-colored enough that, I don't think the line mattered. I was moving that bait fast enough, but one of the big things is if you're throwing that bait on lighter line, you're going to break it off more often. I throw this on a Daiwa Tatula Elite 7.6 flipping stick. I like the length on that to be able to pick up that line very quickly. I throw it on an 8-to-1 ratio Tatula SV. It's a great reel for this. You can pick up the line very quickly and get that bait where it needs to be very fast. And this is a very efficient way to fish. But one of the other keys with a wobblehead, and this is kind of that extra 2.0 level with a wobblehead, if you're not familiar with throwing it, is you really have to let this thing load up. Think about it like a crankbait. When you're throwing a crankbait, you want to keep reeling until you feel that fish on there. They're going to pop it a lot of times, and the natural reaction, if somebody hits you, you better hit them back. And that's the same thing with fishing, right? As soon as you feel that bite, you're ready to set the hook. But the key is on this bait is you have to let that load up on your rod. And then from that point, you just do that real sweeping hook set. I do give it a little bit more because I trust my setup, I trust my rod, I trust my line. This has a good backbone, a lot of backbone, but a good tip on it for this particular technique. So the wobblehead, very key to success both mornings of the tournament, and dragging that thing around, reeling that thing around more or less. So once I felt like that kind of got away from me or kind of died, I went to up the river a little bit and picked up a favorite of mine, especially this time of year, but is an E-Factor Double Colorado. I got that hammered blade here, gives off a lot more flash. I got the orange kicker. You'll notice in all these baits that I'm about to show you, orange was a key deal, I believe. So I was even considering flipping this to an orange skirt, but never did. I was able to get the bites that I was after on this particular bait. So same with day one and day two. I pretty much did the exact same thing. Day one, I kind of left the area a little bit too early, I think, up the river. I should have stayed up there on the first day and really captured a lot more bites. But there's a 1/2 ounce E-Factor spinnerbait. Fantastic. Got a great hook on it. With that 1/2 ounce, I was really throwing that around a lot of cover. So whether that was, shallow bank grass, water willow, lay downs, things like that, just crawling that thing as best I could. And then I noticed on the second day that I had a couple of fish come all the way to the boat and swipe at that thing. And I wanted to make sure that I was getting that bait down there a little bit deeper, so I switched over to that 3/4 ounce. But on both of these, the setup I was throwing was a Tatula Elite 7.4. It's the spinnerbait big topwater rod. And then I was also throwing that on 8-to-1 because a lot of times what was happening is they were slacking that line. So you needed to pick up that line as fast as you possibly could to set the hook on those fish. I was also throwing this. I was throwing this one on 20-pound line. Same thing, Samurai, Daiwa Samurai. And what's really cool too, guys, is Kistler Rods actually makes these little stickers. And I really love this because sometimes you forget. And what this does is it allows you to put that little sticker on there of what size line you have. You can also put what month of the year that you put it on there. And then also down there, there's some braid or fluorocarbon. I pretty much know that I throw fluorocarbon and braid, so I don't need to put that one on there. And I knew for the Bass Open, I was going to be changing line, so I didn't really mess with the date on there. But the only other difference on this 3/4 ounce one, because I wasn't throwing it around a lot of cover or as much cover, as I did go with a trailer hook on this one. I didn't put any sort of trailer itself on this, but I did put this little Gamakatsu Stinger trailer hook on here with a little keeper. And I really think this was a key to getting 2 of those bites, and actually 2 of the bigger ones were hooked on this. One of them had the actual hook, and then this one was backing it up, but the other one just got hooked on that trailer hook. So if you're in open water, if you feel like you want to mess around with that trailer hook, I would recommend it. But in that shallow water around that cover, I just really didn't think that it was a very viable option for me personally. The other thing I did get one key bite on this week was an Apex Ace finesse jig. And again, brown and orange with the orange dipped baby menace. This is the smaller size menace. I really love that in the cooler water. Even though the temperatures were between 48 and 55 throughout the tournament, I was really able to utilize this, flip that around, and get a key bite. I don't know exactly why they weren't wanting to bite a jig better, but that particular bait did get me a key bite in the tournament, a wave fish that I had. This setup here was a 6.9 skip and jig rod. Again, Tatula Elite 22-pound Samurai fluorocarbon. And the reason why I like that Samurai so much as compared to a lot of different lines out there, it's fairly new. The price point's kind of in line with a lot of the other high-end fluorocarbons, but I think that Samurai, 2 things. One, it's level wound, meaning on the spool, it's level across, so that's not on top of each other. I think that really helps with the strength of that line a little bit because it's not sitting in such a way that it's layered on top of each other. If you look at all of your spools of line, pick them up, look and see if it's level wound on there. I think that's a big deal. Second thing is it may help this, but I think that Daiwa Samurai is also a limper line. So when you cast it out there, it lays on the water a lot nicer, and it maintains that flatness that instead of coiling that line up as much as it does. So another bait, I had a lot of stuff. Actually, I only really had 4-5 things on the deck. Had a couple of duplicates of a lot of these things, just different sizes and different styles. But the other thing is the Shock Hunter, Aftershock, Apex chatterbait, bladed jig. So this is a great bait. I was using this in the Fire Craw and a Fire Craw Z-Craw on the back of that. And this is a 1/2 ounce version, again, 22-pound Samurai. And on this one's on a 7.4 bladed jig rod. So this is a Brent Ehrler signature rod. And then I was using this on a lower speed reel, so a 6.3-to-1 Tatula 200. And the reason for that is I really wanted to make sure I was keeping this a lot slower presentation because I was wanting this to bounce off the bottom. I was wanting it to knock off a lot of those rocks. You can see the head's kind of destroyed on this. But and then the other thing is you don't see a lot of chatterbaits or bladed jigs with a weed guard in it. At Apex, we put that in there. If you don't need it for whatever reason, if you're not around cover, you can always pull it out or cut it out. Or just really lighten it up, so you can just take a couple strands out of it. I would just recommend cutting them. But what that really does is it allows you to fish that around more heavy cover. And that was really a key. So there was a lot of stumps in the areas that I was fishing. You couldn't see them a lot of times. So without that weed guard on there, I was also throwing another chatterbait without a weed guard. And you would get hung up a lot more. So obviously being efficient on your cast is very important for that. So I thought that that was a better option with that weed guard in that Apex Aftershock bladed jig. So check those out, apextackle.com or apextackleco.com, and that's going to be a good bait for you this spring as well. And then last but not least, when the weather, this was all really weather dependent, and really what I found was that this red-eye shad, again, I was fishing really, really shallow, especially for the time of year. You might think February, that's much more, you need to be out deep. A lot of guys are live scoping, and I did it a little bit in practice. That's just not my jam. If I can catch them shallow, I would much rather catch them shallow. I just feel more confident up there. I feel more, better about the quality of fish that was coming to me. And I think really if we'd had one more warm day or, skipped over one of the cold days, we'd have really smashed them up shallow. But the reason why I picked this rattle bait up, this red-eye shad in this case, it's a 1/4 ounce. Again, fishing very shallow. My boat was in 6 foot a lot of the day, and casting up into, zero basically. I mean, I was literally casting to the bank on a flat. And, that was a big deal for me that I had a very light bait. But I changed the hooks out on this. These are the Gamakatsu G Finesse treble hooks here. I thought that those bites sometimes were very light and they were getting away from it. So I wanted to make sure I got those fish in the tournament. But really the key to this, had this on 14-pound Samurai as well. And this was on a 6.4-to-1 or 6.3-to-1 reel. And then the 7-foot shallow crankbait lipless rod, again, a Daiwa Tatula. You'll notice that every one of these rods is a Daiwa Tatula. I absolutely love that series of rods. And then I also, all of these pretty much are Tatula SVs. And I really think there's a big deal with that to me personally. A lot of my buddies give me grief on this, but to me, I think having the exact same setup as far as feel, right? When I put that rod and reel in my hand, if I'm juggling around several different baits throughout the day, I want it to feel as similar as that last bait I pick up. Control the controllables. And that's one thing that I do. I keep my line very simple, typically, 20-pound line, sometimes at 22. And then 14-pound is really about the lowest I'll go, especially fishing shallow. If I'm, fishing a jerk bait or fishing in a real clear water, of course, I'll go down to 8 or 10. But in that shallow water, the way that I was fishing this week, it was really important to me to make sure that that line was as strong as possible. And one of the ways that you can do that is by upsizing that line. I wasn't really worried about, getting that bait down, getting it deep. So that really didn't matter to me. I just wanted to make sure, and especially a lot of times what was happening because I was fishing so shallow, those bites would come really close to the boat. And when you go to set the hook, I'm amped up a lot of times, especially if you just caught one or are ready to catch one, you're amped up, you're ready to go. And if they bite that bait really close to the boat, chances are with a lighter pound test line, you might jerk that thing and break it off. And that's the last thing you want to do in a tournament. So one of the other things, just kind of a word to the wise, especially fishing shallow, is make sure that you're checking your line often. It's a big deal, especially on that wobble head. Got to check your line, make sure that it's good so that you're pulling on it and retying as much as you can, especially every time you catch a fish, anytime you get hung up, and then really just pulling on that every few, dozen cast or so. It only takes one cast to really make a bad day, to be honest with you. So I fished pretty clean this week. Had one fish that I broke off on at Wobblehead, but that was specifically from not checking my line. Don't know how big it was. It broke right when I set the hook, but and then had one other fish follow that spinner bait out all the way to the boat, didn't really get it. Kind of swiped at it right there at the boat. Pretty good fish, over a 3-pounder, would have really helped the bag on the second day, but that's why I went to that 3/4 ounce. Wound up catching a couple extra fish because I noticed what was going on with that fish and that it was coming a lot further out to the boat, whether it was chasing it out from the bank or whether it was actually suspended sitting off the bank. That's possible. Either way, I wanted to make sure that I upsized that weight on that particular spinnerbait to get that down a little bit further, help me slow down a little bit, because again, getting towards the end of the day on that second day, had 15, 14 on that second day, and getting towards the end of the day, I was really, amped up, trying to catch that next, one more big bite. Catching a 6-pounder, culling out a 2-pounder. I had a 4-pound deficit at the end of the day to make the top 10. So I was definitely amped up, really trying to close that deal, to jump into that top 10 and go from 57th to the top 10. Wound up having a respectable 16 pounds, almost 15, 14, and getting up to 25th place. So that's how my Bass Open season started. First tournament of the Bass Open Central Division, Central number 2. We're going to Logan Martin in Alabama in May, and then we are going to Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma in June. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys. If you don't mind, subscribe. We'll have couple of clips from the tournament. Hopefully you guys were able to catch it on live. I did go live on Facebook to where you could watch it the second morning. Service kind of cut out, so I didn't get to film all day. Wish I would have on that live stream, but it was pretty cool, and I'm probably going to do that again at Logan Martin and live stream the day, just because there was a lot of comments, a lot of positive feedback from you, all of you all that were watching, and had a couple guys said they couldn't get anything done on that Friday because they were sitting there watching me fish. So unfortunately it was a little slow during the morning time, but wish I'd have been able to bring you guys the afternoon because it was hot and heavy. So with that, thanks for watching, guys. Got this new sweatshirt in. If you guys need to check it out, Catch the Fever. They make fantastic crappie rods, catfish rods, and some fishing line as well. They're out in the East Coast. A couple of my buddies just sent me these sweatshirts, so wanted to make sure that I gave them a shout out. Shane and Caleb out there, thanks a lot, guys, and we will talk to you guys soon. Thanks for following. Share this out for me if you don't mind, and we'll see you guys on the water.